Okay, so I think we're all in. So warm welcome to all of you. Thank you very much for being here with us today, with Matthew, our winemaker, and with me. I'm the sales and marketing manager at Monteverro. We are here in our tasting room in front of our barrel cellar, and we are very pleased and very happy to present to you our 4 wines in the actual vintage 2011. Before starting the tasting, let me explain to you briefly the Monteverro story. Monteverro is a project from scratch, which started in the year 2004. Behind this project is the vision of Georg Weber. Georg Weber is a German businessman, passionate about wine, and he found this very promising land in the Maremma, in the southern part of Tuscany. We are approximately 1.5 hours south of Bulgaria, and we are very close to the sea. So we are 3 kilometers away from the sea, which means that we have a very mineralic soil with always a very fresh breeze coming from the sea. But Matthew will explain more in detail our terroir afterwards. So Georg Weber found this very promising land in 2003 and planted the first wines in 2004. So we're speaking here about a project which is 10 years old. Our very first vintage which we produced, which Matthew produced, was the vintage 2008. And now we are very happy to present to you in avant-première the vintage 2011. We are talking about 4 wines. So we will taste first our Chardonnay, 100% Chardonnay. Then we will taste our Tinata, which is a Syrah Grenache blend. And then we will taste our Terra di Monteverro and our flagship wine, Monteverro, which are made both of Bordeaux grape varieties, meaning Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Petit Verdot. Matthew is accompanied by Michel Roland. So Michel Roland is our consultant. He joined us since the very beginning of the project. Matthew is also accompanied by Jean Höfliger. So Jean Höfliger is also our consultant. Jean Höfliger, you may know, he's the winemaker and general manager of Alpha Omega in Napa Valley. And we are also accompanied and consulted by Claude and Lydia Bourguignon. They are our soil experts and soil analyzers. As Kevin said, so you have the possibility to ask questions after the tasting of each wine. Before leaving it up to Matthew to taste the wines, I just wanted to introduce you, Matthew. So he is French. He's, as I said, with us since the very beginning. So he's the one having already produced the very first vintage 2008. He studied in Burgundy and in Champagne, and then he traveled around the world and worked for many wineries from Napa Valley over to Europe to New Zealand. And we're very proud and very happy to have him here with us, since the very beginning at Monteverro. Matthew, before starting the tasting of the wines, do you want to tell us something more in general about the vintage 2011? How was the vintage 2011, which is our 4th vintage only?
Okay, so first, hi everyone, thank you for being here. So 2 words about the vintage 2011. That was a very different vintage from the 3 first vintage I did in Monteverro. 2008, 9, and 10 were quite a late vintage actually, because we were beginning the harvest usually at the beginning of September and finishing it at the mid of October. And actually in 2011, all the season began pretty much the same like the other season, like lots of rain during winters and beginning of spring quite nice and temperate. That helps the flowering to be excellent. Actually, we had excellent flowering in 2011. And then came the month of July, with two beautiful rain in July that helps the vine to support actually the heat of summer. And then in August we had a heat wave from pretty much the 10th of August, and that actually never stops. That means that we had a heat wave from the 10th of August until end of September. And that means that we harvested, for example, the Chardonnay on the 17th of August. That never happens before. That's why it was quite a tricky vintage, because every time I am going with my vineyard manager, going tasting in the vineyard, you say, okay, I'm going first in the 10th of August, tasting the grapes, and you say, okay, usually we harvest these grapes on the 1st of September, but it's already very, very close to be ready. So that means when you know that all the vintage will be like this. So you need to have a lot of reactivity, and that's what the winery has actually in terms of technical. In the winery, we can have all this reactivity, and that's why we could have actually all the grapes in the winery by mid of September. So that means that we did this harvest 2011 from mid-September to pretty much mid-August to mid-September. So let's begin with
Chardonnay.
the Chardonnay now first. So I don't know if everyone poured the wine. So actually, Chardonnay is one block in the bottom of the slope, where actually it's very good fun. I mean, it's very good, yes, because we put this in the bottom of the slope because there is a major percentage of clay that retain humidity during summer, and that avoid having any water stress during summer and keeping the acidity in the grapes. The grapes are brought actually part of this block after part of this block. We decide every part of this block when the fruit is perfectly mature to bring it in the cantina. We press, ferment naturally in the barrels. The malolactic as well is done in the barrels. Then we taste the wine in the month of January pretty much, when all the fermentations are done. And that's when we are doing this blend. After this blend, that we put part of the blend in concrete tank and part of the blend in barrels. So that's pretty much 50-50. And this concrete tanks actually helps us to bring back the minerality and the purity of the Chardonnay, which is very important for white wine in South Maremma. So let's begin the tasting now.
If I may just add, Matthew, that the Chardonnay is a very small production. So, as Matthew said, it's more or less 2 hectares. So we are producing more or less 4,000 to 5,000 bottles of this wine. So it's really a rarity for us and for the region.
Yeah. So 2011 Chardonnay, I think, is quite open and quite expressive. We have a lot of fruit note, like pear, some flower like rose, I think, as well. What we can say, it's very expressive. It's very open. The barrel notes are here, are present, but very delicate, I think. We have some roasted nuts. And then I think the mouthfeel of this Chardonnay is very interesting, because you have this balance between the fruit and the acidity, the alcohol and the acidity, but we have also a spike of bitterness and sapidity, which is, I think, really a touch of the terroir, because You know that we are very close to the sea, about 3 kilometers far from the sea. So there is all this breeze and this salty breeze actually that we have every day. So this sapidity, I think we can feel it in the moss, and that's quite interesting. That makes actually the moss a little bit longer, and a nice, yeah, minerality and freshness in this wine. I think it's good if some people can just interact with me. If you have any question, any things to say, you just open your mic and just.
I think this is very Meursault-like.
Sorry?
It tastes very Meursault-like. I would not have guessed it was from Italy. I would have guessed it was from Burgundy. And is the climate similar? There's no breezes like this in Burgundy.
Okay, that's a very, very nice compliment.
That's a compliment.
Actually, you said. For the one who knows Monteverro and who have been tasted Monteverro Chardonnay from 2008 until 2011, sees that the style of wine we want to go is pretty much the style of Burgundy Chardonnay, even though we know that it's impossible and we don't want to copy Burgundy Chardonnay. But is a style with something that the purity of the Chardonnay is very important, that it's not hidden by excess of maturity or excess of barrel aging, for example. So this balance of maturity, barrel aging, and all this, we learned it with the experience. I mean, we have just 4 years of experience, but I think for the one who knows and follows the Monteverro project, they understand what I mean. That in 2008, maybe this Chardonnay was very much more body, with much more body and much more maturity. Now we are going to a style with more freshness, and that's what we want. That's where we want to go.
I have one more question. You said that when you put the Chardonnay in concrete tanks, it brings back the acidity and minerality. How does that work?
So actually, in this tank, we have much less oxidation than in a barrel. A barrel is 228 liters. And these 228 liters are being micro-oxidized through the pore of, through the little holes, the pore, I think we say the pores, of the wood. Actually, the concrete tank is 1,600 liters, so it's a bigger continent, and then the concrete actually is less oxidative, because there is still a very small amount of oxygen that pass through the concrete, but it's a very small amount of oxygen. So that means that we have an aging of an oxidation, a micro-oxidation of the Chardonnay that is more late in the delayed in the concrete tank, and that's actually the blend of those two components that makes the wine interesting.
We can perhaps even see the concrete egg.
I don't know if you can see. It's
over there?
Just right here.
Just right, exactly. This is one of them.
This is one of the egg-shaped concrete tanks. We don't see it here. Yeah. So we have two of them actually. One, we're using it for the Chardonnay, and the other one we're using it for the blend of Syrah and Grenache. So if no one has more question about the Chardonnay, we can have question after all the tasting. But maybe I can move to the second wine.
Can I just ask, Matthias? I want to, before we lose it. I heard you say sapidity as an adjective. Did you mean salinity or sapidity when you referred to the quality of the Chardonnay based on 3 kilometers from the sea?
Actually,
salinity. I get.
I mean salinity. So
yes.
I hope Yeah. Okay, that was saltiness. Yeah, salinity.
There is a word in English, sapidity, but I'm not sure what it means. So too close to stupidity, so we don't want to think about that.
Let's use salinity.
Yes.
But that salinity, that's a leitmotif that we're gonna see in all the wine, in the reds as well. We can find this salinity. So let's move to the second wine.
So this is Tinata.
The Tinata. So Tinata actually, I don't know if you understood, but Chardonnay was quite of a challenge for us as a new project, as a newcomer in the Maremma, because there is no point of references of great Chardonnay in Maremma. But I guess Syrah Grenache blend, it was the same, because we have some very good Syrah. Some Syrah in Maremma and south of Tuscany, but a blend of Syrah Grenache is quite unknown. So that was a very good idea of Georg, of the owner, to bring Grenache into Maremma and to this project. From now, the blend is changing every year, but pretty much it's about 70% of Syrah, 30% of Grenache. Depends of the vintage, depends of the year. Sometimes it's 20% of Grenache. Maybe one year it's going to be 40% of Grenache. We definitely see that Grenache, with the aging of the vineyard, is getting better and better, more and more concentrated and more interesting. For now, Syrah is the best out of the two varieties. Is the best variety. Sorry. So Syrah Grenache is 2 blocks of about 3 hectares, 2 hectares of Syrah and 1 hectare of Grenache. So same as I said for Chardonnay, we were very surprised by the weather, the very hot weather in August. So I usually harvest Syrah at the beginning of September, so I harvest the Syrah the 20th of August actually, and very, very fast. If I remember well, in 5 days all the Syrah was in. But that's important, the Syrah to be brought in at the good moment, because actually the Syrah, from now, it's the acidic base of the blend. Today, the Grenache needs to be waited in the vineyard in order to get concentration. And usually we have to wait, even though alcohol is high and acidity is low, in order to have a good maturity of the Grenache. But since we are making this blend, the acidity of the Syrah, the freshness of the Syrah, the fruit of the Syrah is making this wine with a good balance. In this vintage, we used 70% of Syrah and 30% of Grenache. Everything is natural fermented. Once the maceration is done, we go directly into the barrels in order to make the malolactic fermentations. And after the degustation, tasting in January, we put about 25–30%, depends on the vintage, into the concrete tank, and the rest of the blend into the barrels. Then we make the aging about 16 months, pretty much. And then it comes these wines that I think a quite particular wine. Every year, this wine is very expressive. Again, as the Chardonnay, I think also this Syrah Grenache blend is very expressive. Some people also say that's a very sexy wine. We have a lot of nice fruit, sherry, but like the sherry and the violet, the lavender as well. And what's nice also that in this wine I feel a certain how can I say, a real impact of the Macchia. So, I mean, the Macchia is a wide forest, a wide Mediterranean forest that we have on the back actually of this vineyard, And I think personally that has an impact on the vineyard, on the fruit. And I can feel some lavender, some notes of herbs from the macchia.
And if I may just add, Matthew, so Tinata is produced on a plot of 2-3 hectares. So we are only producing more or less 10,000 bottles of this wine, and this parcel of 2-3 hectares is really surrounded by the macchia. So it's on a very special point of our vineyard, on the very top, on the high point, and surrounded by the macchia. And this really reflects in the wine.
Yeah, and with that's also very important. With very big concentration in the soil, a big concentration of round rocks that actually is very similar to these rocks we can find in Châteauneuf-du-Pape. Not the same amount. I mean, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, the soil is completely covered with these rocks. Actually, we have a good amount of these rocks, and that's important because that actually helps during winter, during also spring, to drain the excess of water. And this excess of water that could damage actually the good growth of the vineyard. So that's a very particular block where we planted Syrah and Grenache. And
I just wanted to ask if they have any questions.
I have a question, Jeremy here. Sorry, can you hear me?
Hi, Jeremy. Very welcome.
Sorry for being so late to the call. Little technical problem. When you said that you do only natural fermentation on this wine, do you mean that you don't inoculate? So it's all spontaneous fermentation?
Yes, it's all spontaneous fermentation. I can do this because actually we have the technique here to make it happen. I have in these tanks we're using very reactive cooling and heating plant. So that means that I can cool down the grapes when they arrive at about 10 degrees. So I'm sure that I'm actually selecting only the good bacteria and yeast, and I keep it for 2, 3, 5 days, depends on the capacity of the grapes to support this cold fermentation. I would say. And then I put the target temperature to 25 degrees or 28, depends of the tank, and in, let's say, 24 hours, the tank is at 25 degrees. And when you put in less than 24 hours the temperature from 10 degrees to 25 degrees, you have immediately pretty much the fermentation that happens. So we avoid this, I don't know in English, in French we say temps de latence, which means that in this moment when the temperature is 15, 20 degrees, you can have some, let's say, bad yeast that can use the sugar and make some bad byproducts. If we put the temperature at 25 degrees in a very short time, we know that we will have Saccharomyces cerevisiae, the yeast we want, will make the fermentation. That's how we do it. And actually,
it's really impressive.
Yeah, actually, I didn't say that, but for some of this wine, actually for some wine that comes in this blend, we are also doing barrel fermentation. That means that we are opening the barrels and putting the grapes inside, and actually that's the same. We have 2 different rooms. One room at 10 degrees, one room at 28 degrees Celsius. And by moving barrels from this room to another, we are doing the same process. So we are controlling the temperature of the wine, and we can induce natural fermentation to happen in the barrels. And these barrels, we use it for what I think the best block and the best grapes.
Very cool.
Why did you choose? Why did you choose to use Grenache and Syrah in this particular plot? What was what led to that decision?
So actually, this decision was the initial project. When I arrived, this initial project was already decided to make a blend of Syrah Grenache. The proportion was not decided yet, and it's still not decided because we can still move in the future to 40-60, 50-50, maybe 1 year, because we think that the Grenache is so impressive that it will need to be 50% in the blend. But yeah, from the beginning, we knew that we wanted to do a blend of Syrah and Grenache, and that I think that it's not local grape, as we can say local is Tuscany and Maremma, but is local grape as the Mediterranean grapes. In Grenache, Garnacha in Spain. And actually, we find also some Grenache, lots of Grenache in Sardinia as well, which is very, very close to it. Yeah.
I think we must say it was a decision of the owner. So the owner wanted to produce a Syrah Grenache blend here on this terroir.
Mm. And I think it's a success, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is anyone has another question? Or we can move to the last one.
We can move to the Bordeaux blends.
Okay. So actually, maybe we will. I will explain the two wines at the same time, and maybe you can also taste the two wines at the same time. So we will test maybe first Terra di Monteverro and then Monteverro. So they are both blend of Cabernet Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon. A majority of Cabernet Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon, and then a touch of Merlot and Petit Verdot. Same about this vintage. I mean, Merlot was harvested at mid of August. That was very, very strange for me because usually I harvest the first reds maybe 10 days after the white. And I remember in this vintage that I harvested the Merlot the day after we harvested the first block of Chardonnay. So we harvested the Merlot on mid of August. And that was a record, actually, because we harvested then all the rest, Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Petit Verdot, in about 10 days, in mid-September. So that's important that you understand this, that in the winery, we are able to do this. So if a heat wave like in 2011 happened, if a bad weather and a storm happens in Monteverro, we are able to bring pretty much all the grapes in a very short time, and that's actually can save a vintage, and that's very, very important. This. And so to speak about those two wines. That's important that you know that we are not yet selecting the grapes to go into Terra or to go into Monteverro. All the grapes that we receive at Monteverro from the vineyard is ideally going into Monteverro. So I put exactly the same effort in all the lots of Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc that comes into the cantina. I put the same effort in order to make the best wine possible. And that's only when we are making the tasting. Usually we taste those wines in the month of March because, as I said, we are doing natural fermentation, so sometimes it's very long fermentation, even longer than what you can think, because we have some fermentations that still continue in February, in March, in the barrels. So we are done with malolactic fermentation, but we still continue the alcoholic fermentation. That happens. And that's very important that I follow all these barrels, all these lots, we have an internal laboratory that can also control if there is any problem with those barrels. So first, you understand that we produce all the wine to go into Monteverro. Then we make the tasting in the month of March with Jean, with Michel Roland, and also with Gerhard Weber, the owner. So all four of us, then we actually test all the different lots, all the different barrels. We get all together an image of what the vintage is. And then when we try to create those two wines, so Terra di Monteverro and Monteverro, we try to create those two wines that will represent the best this vintage. So that's very important that actually making a blend is not hiding the image of a vintage. Making a blend, actually, I think, is should show and make the best of vintage. So so once we have this image of the vintage, we are making those two blends. So Terra di Monteverro, a wine that is more accessible, wine that is more on the fruit side with a nice acidity, and the wine that will be actually consumed earlier, so that needs to be open and expressive right now. And then another blend that will be Monteverro, that will be a wine with much more layer, maybe a wine that is not as impressive and maybe expressive as Terra right now, but a wine that is that has much more layer and that has a much larger understanding. So if we first taste Terra, what's important to see is in Terra di Monteverro is the freshness. I think we have some herbs, some minty character in Terra di Monteverro. This freshness is very important for a wine from south of Tuscany. I mean, the border between maturity and over maturity is very small in south of Tuscany. So that's important for us to choose a good date of harvest and to feel this great maturity in the glass. So we feel the fruit, we feel, I think, the cassis, and this is about 50% of new wood, but I think the wood is very well integrated in this wine. We have some cedar wood, cigar box, but a very, very light notes. And then tasting the wine, I think it's important here to feel this this freshness, this attractability. I don't know if you can say this. A wine that is very drinkable,
accessible.
Accessible. Yeah, thank you.
Very smooth, very velvety.
Still a wine that has a certain aging potential. I mean, we have, I think, 4, 5, 6 years of aging potential definitely in this wine. But that's a wine that is, ready to drink. And that's important because in the range of Monteverro, that's the wine maybe people will get in contact with the first. So they will get in contact probably with Terra di Monteverro first. So that's also very important that this wine is really open and ready to drink now. And then if we now move to the wine Monteverro, our flagship wine. So some people could say, this wine is not as attractive as Terra di Monteverro, and
at the moment.
Not at the moment, but I think this wine is much more complex. is not as intense, as expressive of as Terra di Monteverro, but is yeah, more delicate and fine, and that's exactly what we want to do with our flagship wine. So this is a wine that spent about 20 months in barrels with about 70% of wood. It has definitely a wood character, some wood notes. It's still well integrated. It's a wine that also will, I hope, need some aging. So I hope that people will wait to drink this wine. So this has now 2 years of bottling. Of bottle, and I think, yeah, the wood character now is getting better and better integrated, and the fruit character is coming out. We have some plums. I think we have some tomato stems, something like some freshness, yeah. And a wine now that in the mouth is quite large. I mean, it's a solid wine. It has a lot of tannins, definitely, but these tannins are very fine, and that's the important thing of Monteverro, to make a flagship wine, to say the people, to try to teach to the people that this wine is a wine that has to wait, but we know that also not a lot of people wait so long time to drink wine. So I think it's important also to make wine, and this wine to have this tannin, this very soft tannins. And I don't know what do you think about this this comparison of Terra and Monteverro. What do you think about this?
I have a comment. I have a comment and a question.
Yes.
These happen to be wines that are a flavor profile that I like, so I'm very happy about that. But I also feel like I've taken a journey from Burgundy to the Rhone to Bordeaux. And how will I explain to somebody what it means to be a Maremma wine without saying, well, this is just like Bordeaux or this is just like Burgundy? How would you describe the particular flavor profile or aromas of your area without just becoming an imitation of another wine region?
Okay, that's a very good question. Actually, we are first of all in south of Maremma, so we are well separated from Bulgaria or Sugoleto, which are more north of us. So this place called Capalbio, where we are, is quite a new place. I mean, there is not a lot of cantina here. It's really new. It was not so much known for quality wine, and that's a big challenge for us to make those three wines, those three different style of wine in the same place. And I can understand your question. We have some objectives, some goals that make Chardonnay very mineral and very fresh. To make Syrah Grenache with this sexy notes, sexy characters, but with also the freshness and acidity of the Syrah and the flowers like lavender and violet. What I think, what we can feel in all of those wine is the proximity of the sea, the salinity, and thank you, Peter. The salinity, I think we feel it in all the wine, from the white to the reds as well, and that make the wine a little longer actually. So that's quite interesting for us. Second thing, in the reds, particularly in the reds, I think we can feel the macchia and herbal character in all of the wine. I definitely feel the macchia character and rosemary, laurel, what else? Lavender. I said in the Syrah Grenache. I can feel maybe more the minty character in the Terra di Monteverro. And then again in Monteverro, again I feel also the laurel, for example, and all these herbs. I think, and this macchia influence, I think I can feel it in all of the reds. Did I answer to your question, Becky?
Yes, actually, I was thinking about the salinity myself. How do you spell macchia?
Macchia, you spell it M-A?
M-A
Double C or double C?
C
Double C.
double C
H.
I-A H-I-A.
Thank you.
If I can just intervene, macchia is translated into English as maqui, and it's really not woods per se, but it's like shrubbery. It's if you've ever seen the coastline of California, it's not dissimilar from that.
You mean like garrigue, kind of?
I'm sorry?
Kind of like garrigue?
Yes.
I'm not sure what that is.
It's a synonym of maqui actually in south of France. Maqui we use it more in Corsica, and garrigue we use it in Languedoc and Roussillon in south of France. And actually it's a not very high vegetation. It's always green. Never loses his leaf, always green in all year young.
But it's a very dense vegetation.
And very dense vegetation.
Very dense.
With a lot of wild boar. I don't know if we explained you about this, but Monteverro, the name of the winery, it means the hill of the wild boar. Monte, the hill, Verro, the wild boar. And we have a lot of it. Yeah. It can be a problem. I mean, we have some friends, we have some good connections with hunters. Yeah.
What does tinata mean? Like as in Tina?
As we said before, so to plant the Syrah, to produce a Syrah Grenache plant was the personal choice of the owner, Georg Weber, because his mother in particular is a huge fan of Syrah Grenache wines. And so he dedicated this wine, the Syrah Grenache plant, to his mother, who's called Tina. So that's why we called the wine Tinata, because it's an homage to his mother, Tina.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We are in the middle of the harvest at the moment, so we are...
So yeah, maybe also a few words about...
So if Matthew wants to say a few words about the vintage 2014, if this interests you. What is going on this year so far at Monteverro?
2014, it's the complete opposite of 2011. Actually, it should have been a quite early vintage, because until the end of June, we would have said that okay, mid-August we would begin harvest. But then July has been very cold. I mean, very cold for Tuscany, and quite humid. That quite delayed the veraison, that when the grapes are changing color, and actually even the month of August was not very hot. So we began the Chardonnay end of August, about the 25th of August. Merlot we began on the 5th of September, 10th of September. We were very lucky because no much rain, just one small rain of, I remember, 5 millimeters at the beginning of September, and less than 10 millimeters on the 15th of September. And then now we just finished Cabernet Franc, and we are now beginning Cabernet Sauvignon and Petit Verdot. This vintage seems to be a good vintage. We have to see because we have quite a very big diameters of the berries. Because as I told you, the months of July and August were quite rainy, so that means that the growth of the berries was quite big, and we're losing a little bit of concentration of the juice and then of the wine. So that means maybe I need to do in the winery so what we called bleeding. That means taking off some juice, but only the juice of the tank, in order to have in this tank then the same proportion of solid parts, but with less juice. So that means that this juice will extract from these solid parts more tannin, more structure, and more concentration.
So will there be a Monteverro rosé next summer?
No. We're not doing any rosé at Monteverro. No worries. Now this wine will be just sold in bulk. We will not actually use this wine.
Not commercialize it.
Yeah.
Can I ask you about distribution in the U.S.? Are your wines widely distributed? Where are they so far?
Yes, so first of all, I mean, we're very happy about our collaboration with VinConnect, with Kevin Sitters and his team, because the distribution channel sales to direct customers is very important for us, and this goes through VinConnect. And then our wines are also distributed in the main markets, in the main states in the US, through our importer OPG.
Aha, okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
And I have a quick question. Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
Rebecca.
Okay.
Yeah.
A question about the alcohol content. Is that part to do with the vintage, or is that I'm not familiar enough with the wines to know. Is that a stylistic thing, or more 2011 being a little warmer?
Okay. Yeah. So 2011 was a warm vintage, definitely. So that's why we have this alcohol content about 14.5. But I think what was important is this reactivity that we had during this vintage, in order to bring the grapes at the good moment, in order to keep some acidity still in the wine. I think the wine are still completely alive, with an amount of alcohol that is 14.5 can be quite high for some people, definitely. But we are always speaking of a balance. I mean, if a wine has a certain concentration, tannin structure, of a concentration of aroma and expression, it can definitely support this 14.5 alcohol. I don't think in those wine we have the alcohol that really goes, that comes out more than the fruit character or the wine actually. For example, in the 2014 vintage, already in 2012 vintage, we have alcohol content that will be 13.5, 14.
Right.
So it all depends on the vintage, but this I don't choose it first, and I let actually the nature work. I mean, I can't produce every year the same wine. As I told you, when we're testing all the base wine, we want to give the opportunity to the vintage to express itself in the blend. Even though we are doing a blend, it could be very easy, even though it's never getting very easy. But it could be easy to make a wine that is a little bit different than the vintage, but that will be better in certain way, or yeah.
Okay,
So that's important. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Mathieu, and Olivia, if I could just break in here because.
Oh.
We can hear you.
Sorry.
Okay, Peter has Okay.
We just have Rebecca moving, but no one
No, I
else is
think
moving.
no, I think that Peter had to leave it, had to leave the tasting, as far as I could understand.
Is anyone else can hear us?
Can you hear us?
Sure, indeed.
Okay.
Ah, okay.
Okay. So it's just Peter. It's just Peter who has a technical
Yes, it's
problem.
fine.
Okay.
Okay.
So please allow me at this point to say a big thank you to WinConnect, to Kevin Sitters and his team for making this happen, and also, of course, to Liz Whittaker, our PR agency, who contacted you all and who organized everything with Kevin together. So thank you very much to both of you for making this happen.
Thank you. The wines are delicious.
And thank you for having taken your time and for accompanying us through this tasting. So the wines, the new vintage 2011 will be available on the US market in the coming months. So
Great.
Thanks,
I
everyone.
can honestly say this is
Thank
the
you.
best virtual tasting I've ever been to. Also, from a technical standpoint, in terms of hearing you real time, and so we're getting there.
Glad it worked out.
This was our first one, so we have been very nervous.
happy.
It's the very first one, but we're very happy about it. So.
All
Good. Well, Vin Connect made you look good here.
Thanks, everybody.